Welcome to this video where we're going to be talking about the Ivory Act. The Ivory Act impacts not just our own collection, but the antiques world as a whole. Stick with us while we look at the Ivory Act. If you like this video, give us a like and subscribe down below, and let's get on. The Ivory Act 2018, which has just come in force in 2022, has done so as a result of the enormous number of, especially African elephants that are killed for their tusks. Every year, 20,000 elephants are killed for the ivory tusk, mainly. That's 55 animals a day are killed for their tusks. Clearly, nobody would have this by choice, and so the Ivory Act is intended to make the value of ivory, in effect, valueless. It does so by stopping the sale of new ivory, but its impact is also on antique ivory. The idea being to make all ivory objects, in effect, valueless. And this includes the market value, but also the probate value, the insurance value. It effectively makes all ivory objects valueless because simply we cannot sell ivory. From my own personal opinion, I would do anything to stop an animal being harmed, let alone being killed. And so the effect of the Ivory Act, whilst it prevents the sale of objects that we hold within the collection, it is obviously one which goes to far-reaching ends in order to achieve a long-term goal. So whilst I appreciate that we hold a lot of objects which have ivory, it is frustrating to know that a 200-year-old seal cannot be sold because of its ivory content, whilst we don't want to harm any animals that are alive. The frustrating thing, I suppose, from my point of view, my personal opinion, is that an object, for instance, like this seal, which has a beautifully carved ivory top, boxwood stem and silver matrix, it cannot be sold because it contains ivory. I understand that. However, I also feel frustrated that the sale of this item, clearly of one of great age, is not going to save one African elephant. But the law is what it is, and we are tied to abide by it. So effectively, this item is valueless. I disagree with that. In fact, I disagree totally with it, because its value, market value, may be diminished completely because of its ivory content. I cannot just say that that item has no value. To me, it has huge value. And this is one area that I struggle with, is the making of all ivory valueless. I disagree with it. I don't think that that is actually helping. I don't think it helps at all. Not just from a sentimental point of view, but I think that that item has a huge value. The Ivory Act has just come in force in 2022, and it immediately had an impact on the antique market because it covers all objects that include ivory. For our own purposes, a lot of the seals that we have that were made 200 years ago include an ivory handle. For instance, this one here. So this sort of object is directly affected by the Ivory Act. But its implications are wider in the industry because it does affect all kinds of antiques, whether it has a side table or a chest of drawers which have ivory inset escutcheons. It affects musical instruments, everything, teapots, anything which has ivory involved, it will be affected by the Ivory Act. Under the Act, there are 4 main exceptions. The first one being objects made prior to 1947 that contain less than 10% by volume. So, for instance, an antique item that has ivory If there is less than 10% of the object by volume, then that will fall within the exemption class. The Act also has an exemption for musical instruments made prior to 1975 that has less than 20% of its parts by volume. So for instance, pianos, and keyboards in particular, they will be exempt as long as they contain less than 20% by volume. A further exemption includes small portrait miniatures. So if you imagine a small portrait miniature that's been painted on ivory. So if it was made prior to 1918 and the object itself is less than 320 square centimeters, then that falls within an exemption. The final exemption is for objects prior to 1918 that are considered to be of outstanding artistic or historical importance. Now, obviously, this is one area that the Matrix collection has a particular interest in, because for our purposes, we have a number of objects within the collection that contain an ivory handle. So a lot of the object is of ivory, but it is of outstanding artistic or historical importance. And so for that reason, some of the seals will fall within that exemption. Whilst the Ivory Act affects obviously the items containing ivory, there is a process going through the courts at the moment to extend number of animals or species that are affected. So it will include other species. So it will include narwhal, whale. There are other species that are being included in that, which will affect the value of those items, whether it's a walrus tooth or a narwhal scrimshaw, which are carved pieces of whale, which have been carved 200 years ago. And there's, it's a great antique market, narwhal engravings. They will be rendered effectively valueless as well, because the Act will seek to include these items. So in summary, the Ivory Act covers the majority of ivory items unless they fall into 4 categories. We hope that this has been helpful for you. We watch with great interest as the Ivory Act continues. If you like this, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.